We have studies that show coffee's good, coffee's bad, soy is good, soy is bad. You name it. We'll find a study to prove one side or the other. Meat's good, meat's bad. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But when you have something that's been around for thousands of years, still here today, and you have science to prove it, I feel like that's worth looking at. And then you can then look at the health concern that you have, look at the ancient understanding of that, the application with the modern science, and then look at taking a more authentic approach that's time tested with modern science. And I feel it's a safe road to hoe in this crazy time when you have, I should be a carnivore, I should be a vegan. Nobody knows. And it's so confusing. And that's what makes me feel so comfortable with it, is that you have something that you can kind of rely on because you've got both science and the ancient practice.
Welcome to Hopeful and Wholesome, the show where ambitious women come home to their bodies. I'm your host, Hope Pedraza, and I'm a functional practitioner, human design guide, and expert on all things energy, and your partner in decoding the language of your body. This is your space to reconnect with your body's wisdom, reclaim your energy, and rise into alignment in your health, your business, and your life. Because thriving isn't about pushing harder, it's about learning to listen deeper. So let's dive in because your next breakthrough starts right now. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Dr. John Douillard, and he is a globally recognized Ayurvedic and sports medicine educator with 40 years of experience. He is the host of the Ayurveda Meets Modern Science podcast and author of 7 health books, including bestsellers, Eat Wheat and the 3-Season Diet, which we will talk about both. In his mission to provide free Ayurvedic knowledge to the public, he created lifespa.com, where he connects ancient Ayurvedic wisdom with modern science. And today we are talking about just that, all things Ayurvedic wisdom and how that meets modern science. I love anything about science meets energetics, or science meets spirituality, or science meets ancient wisdom. So I absolutely loved this conversation. And Dr. John is such a wealth of knowledge on all things Ayurvedic in Eastern medicine, right? All the Eastern medicine things and how that we can connect that to science. So we're not just relying on ancient teachings that might have run their course or been disproven, but we're connecting it with the science. And we are going to dive deep into that. Deep into some of his best-selling books, like I mentioned, Eat Wheat and the 3-Season Diet, what those mean, and how we are, quote-unquote, bubble wrapping our digestive system and how that is affecting our overall health. There's so many juicy nuggets in this episode, so let's jump in. Hey, y'all. I am here with Dr. John. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So we talk about longevity on the show in multiple capacities. And so I'm excited to bring kind of some new topics in this overarching topic here for all the ladies listening. And I want to start with the Ayurveda. That's one that we haven't really talked about on the show, and especially as it relates to longevity. Can you explain to us what Ayurveda is? And I know this is kind of a loaded question, so you can answer however you want to, but how we can use this to help with longevity and health span.
So Ayurveda is a traditional medicinal system from India, one of the oldest in the world. And Ayu means life and Veda means the science of. So it's the science of life. And what they did was they really deeply studied nature. And they discovered that there were certain rhythms of nature. We now call them circadian rhythms, which is Nobel Prize winning science. And they mapped out when your biological clocks would be better off eating and sleeping and exercising. And that's all been now proven in Western science. They mapped out how we should eat according to the seasons, because the bugs in the soil change from one season to the next, The hunter-gatherer bugs in their gut change from one season to the next. And we eat the same food every day of the year, oftentimes devoid of a diverse microbiome, and we end up having an issue with our microbial diversity, which directly links to longevity. They did a study, a Stanford study, and they went into museums and they found mummies it was in Arizona and Utah that were about 1,000 years old. And they measured the poo in these mummies, and they measured the microbiome diversity in those mummies. And it was so much more vast when they compared it to modern humans that they literally concluded that this was an extinction event. So thousands of years ago, they talked about these invisible microbes in the Vedic texts. And they call them krimi. And they said there were invisible ones, little bugs. And they said they can be good or they can be bad, all things we know now. And they also said that you don't want to kill them. You want to help support the host and the environment of us, the gut, and let the good bugs fight the battle. Something we've only just are getting our hands around now. We use antibiotics to blow up everything. We use oregano oil to eradicate, the bad bugs, but oftentimes change the environment as well. And Ayurveda was like the whole gut thing, the environment is so incredibly delicate that you have to be really kind and gentle. And we have been really heavy-handed in Western medicine and even in natural medicine. So what I have done with Ayurvedic medicine is I've taken a lot of these ancient wisdom practices that are around for thousands of years, still here today, and found the science to prove them. And that's what I write about at our website, lifespa.com, is we talk about how these ancient practices have really good science, and they can really be, fundamentally important for us to live a life that is going downstream with the current of nature, eating at the right time, eating the right food, how to deal with the stress and all the incoming that we have. Ayurveda, one of the major branches of it is a longevity branch called Rasayana. They were the original longevity system of medicine, and they have so much information about how to live a long life. In our biohacking world, some of the smart biohackers have kind of taken little pieces of it and then maybe even created technology around it, which is kind of cool. But, there's something really beautiful about the actual original understanding and practices, and see how the modern science is proving that. And because, today science can prove whatever it wants. We have studies that show coffee's good, coffee's bad, soy's good, soy's bad. You name it. We'll find a study to prove one side or the other. Meat's good, meat's bad. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But when you have something that's been around for thousands of years, still here today, and you have science to prove it, I feel like that's worth looking at. And then you can then look at the health concern that you have, look at the ancient understanding of that, the application with the modern science, and then look at taking a more authentic approach that's time tested with modern science. And I feel it's a safe road to hoe in this crazy time when you have, I should be a carnivore, I should be a vegan. Nobody knows. And it's so confusing. And that's what makes me feel so comfortable with it, is that you have something that you can kind of rely on because you've got both science and the ancient practice.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. You mentioned the season. I wanted to ask you about the seasons, about seasonal eating. And I know this is dependent on the person. Are there any things, because the seasons and the timing were the two things that I wanted to pick from that. Are there things that we can do that now, what can we do to help us be more seasonal eaters, to help with that diversity you were talking about?
Sure. Well, back in 2000, I wrote a book called The 3-Season Diet, which people kind of thought that this guy really doesn't know what he's talking about, because we all know there's 4. But what I was trying to get across was that there are 4 seasons, but 3 harvests. There's a spring harvest, which is different than a summer harvest, which is different than a fall harvest, which generally the nuts and the seeds last the squirrels through the winter. So there was a change of the diet from one season to the next, change in the bugs, change in the soil bugs, change in our gut bugs. And so what we did was we actually put together a grocery list, like something like this, which you can go on lifespa.com, print out the spring grocery list. And these are all the foods from all over the world that are harvested and have the right properties for spring. Foods that will help decongest you in the spring. It's allergy season. The rains come. The earth is muddy. It's holding on to more water. We hold on to more water too in that season. So when you eat the foods that nature provides, which are the antidote to the extreme of the season, you bring your body back into balance. And if they're organic, you're getting the right bugs on top of the right foods to give you the benefit to antidote the extreme of the season. So like in the summertime, if you're a hot body type, throwing covers off, never wearing a hat or a jacket because you're just always hot, and you're eating a lot of hot foods like spicy food and wine, beer, cheese, fermented foods, a lot of in the summertime, and you're a hot body type eating all these hot foods, and nature's providing in its harvest the antidote to that, which are all the cooling fruits and vegetables. But we are eating all the spicy barbecue, everything, and acidic coffee and wine and cheese and beer and all that, which may be way better for you in the winter because the acidity will actually help warm you in the winter. So that would make that person overheat and become more inflamed over time, where a body type that was more like winter, colder and more dry, and if they're eating frozen smoothies in January, which doesn't exist in nature, you can't get berries and kale and all this stuff in the winter. The squirrels are doing the nut and seed thing to help antidote the coldness and dryness of winter. It's a higher protein, higher fat time of the year. And we know that because that's exactly what the hunter-gatherers have in their gut. They did studies with the Hadza tribe, and they found that their gut bugs in the wintertime was loaded with actinobacteria, which were literally very efficient at delivering fat and protein as fuel. And in the end of the summer, their bugs would change to what are called bacterial deets, which actually help them deliver sugar and more carbohydrates as their fuel supply. And that extra fuel would help give the body that reserve fuel, that insulation to help them navigate a cold winter. So we're seasonal beings, but we don't really act like them anymore. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda. It gave us some insight into how we can kind of reset that seasonal approach to living on this planet.
That makes so much sense. And I mean, I think a lot of us have heard this kind of thing before, but the way you explained it was really nice because I feel like that's one of the benefits of shopping at like a local farmer's market because you're going to be buying stuff that's in season, right?
100%. And because you can go to the grocery store and get organic spinach, but it's, grown in the same soil. It's grown and put on a conveyor belt in a plastic container. And yeah, sure, it's organic. Does it have the diversity of the microbiome that we need? And you're right that a lot of these concepts are sort of commonplace, but the beautiful thing about Ayurveda is this whole system of medicine from how to eat, to when to eat, to what to eat, to when to sleep, herbs to support you, foods that will actually help keep your individual constitution in balance. So you eat a diet that is kind of tailor-made to where your weak links might be. Let's say you get inflamed and you're angry and you have heartburn and indigestion. Well, then there's really specific ways to understand what foods will actually cool you down. And you just take the summer grocery list, circle the foods on that you like, and now you're eating foods from around the world that give you those benefits. So it's so beautifully simplified, and it's a time-tested practice that realistically our ancestors did naturally, but we clearly have lost our way. And from breathing practices to meditation practice to detoxification practices, and even probably the most important thing is a global breakdown in our digestive strength. So everybody's these days is just bubble wrapping their diet, saying, well, I don't eat wheat, dairy, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, nightshades, tomatoes, zucchini, you name it, anything with an anti-nutrient on it, I'm not going to eat because I feel bad. Therefore, the food must be bad. And the problem with that is that it's actually not true. The studies show that those foods are incredibly beneficial for you. But if you have weakened digestion, then you're not going to digest those foods and you're going to blame the oxalates. And a lot of biohackers today find, well, you should eat a carnivore diet because it's an easiest diet to digest. We think of it like the macho man diet. Mm-hmm. There are no anti-nutrients on meat. Mm-hmm. But eating a plant-based diet has anti-nutrients, which are chemicals that the plant produces to ward off predators. Right. It's much more difficult to digest. There's a really cool study to kind of prove this point with Amish kids. And Amish kids have the lowest rates of asthma on the planet. It's kind of strange. And their genetic cousins called the Hutterites came from the same valley in Switzerland. They came here, but they became modern farmers, sterile everything. And those kids have the highest rates of asthma on the planet. Same genetics. So it's a really good, comparison.
Yeah.
So they measured the dust in the barn with these Amish kids who were running barefoot in the barn with cows as pets. And they found it was the dust in the barn that actually created a hormetic effect, a little irritation in the respiratory tract that created an immune response so they didn't get asthma. When you eat these harder to digest foods in a plant-based diet, they will provide you a little bit of irritation. And the reason we all have gut immunity, which is 70% of our immune response, is because we eat these foods that create that little bit of irritation for the body to create an immune reaction to that. That's critical. Studies show that when people eat wheat compared to people who are gluten-free but don't have to be, the people who eat wheat have 4 times less mercury in their blood than people who are gluten-free but don't have to be. Significantly more good bugs in their gut, less bad bugs, and way more killer T cells for an immune response than the people who are gluten-free. So it's really important for us not to say, oh, sure, if I eat this food, you don't feel good, don't eat it. But now that's a canary in the coal mine. Go through, and I have an article called called the Digestive Health Quiz, where we ask you specific questions about what part of your digestion is broken, and therefore how can you fix it with herbs and foods, as opposed to saying, I'm going to take this out of my diet and this out of my diet, and then 6 months later, I got to take something else out of my diet. Now we have people who can't even eat rice and beans, which is like more than half the world would die if they couldn't eat rice and beans. So we've become so bubble wrapped that we have compromised immunity. And when you look at the lousy response that we had to COVID, because your digestive system is directly linked to your ability to assimilate, detoxify, and support immunity. And when that breaks down, all those are going to be compromised. So you wonder, and there's good studies to show that when people had long haul COVID, it was directly linked to congestion of the brain lymphatic and glymphatic systems. Well, if you track that to the source, you're looking smack dab at the digestive system. That's where the lymph starts. Undigested proteins and fats, gluten, dairy, nuts, seeds, those things, hard to digest. They get into your gut, into the garbage can, which is your lymphatic collecting ducts. They congest your lymph around your belly and hips, but they also compromise immunity. They come out through your skin, and they also congest the brain, lymph, and glymph systems, which cause brain fog and cognitive decline and a host of other things. But when you track it back to the source, you're looking at the digestion. Right. And that's what folks aren't doing. I mean, the biohackers aren't doing that. They're going to say, just don't eat all that stuff, eat a carnivore diet and vegetables. I'm going, wait a minute, that might feel good for a little while, but the long-term effect of that is dangerous because you don't have the fiber and the anti-nutrients to create that little irritation that we evolved to have a robust and diverse immunity.
Yeah, this is such a good conversation because I feel, I've experienced this myself where for years I was lactose intolerant and I did so much work in my gut. I did all the things. And now, granted, there's a couple things that still don't agree with me, but for the most part, it's like I can eat a lot of different types of dairy, not every type. And it's like, I would have never been able to eat that before, but it's like, okay, well, obviously, because I think that's the thing we get caught up on blaming the wrong thing. Like you're saying, we're blaming the oxalates and the spinach, we're blaming the whatever, but I have helped, I am all about, not like a plant forward diet. We talk a lot about plant forward diet here. And there's so many people who they start eating more vegetables and fruit and fiber. And they're like, oh, my stomach hurts worse than it ever did before. I was like, well, you got to train it. You've got to retrain it to be able to digest all that fiber. I think people don't realize, like you're saying, there's a reason. Obviously it's harder to digest, but you have to train your body because that's the thing. The benefit is the fiber. And I think I had a gal on, I think by the time this goes out, it'll probably be a month or so ago, but we talked about the blue zone and the people that live the longest, like these centenarians, right? There's so many different plants and it's all the diversity. And clearly there's benefits to all of that. And they're not just sitting over there chewing on meat all day.
No, 100%. And the amount of meat they eat is really quite minimal.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, we'll get right back to the episode. But first, let me ask you this. You've built a vision that others admire. And you've built something that you're really proud of. But behind the scenes, your body feels like it's lagging behind. It just can't quite catch up to your brilliance and your mission that you have. That late night second wind, the foggy mornings, the hormone shifts, the endless push and forcing. You can't strategize your way out of that. And you already know you don't need more supplements. You don't need another supplement stack. You also don't need another side hustle disguised as self-care because nobody wants to have their health as a side hustle. This is about recalibrating your entire ecosystem. And that's why I created the Quantum Reset, a premium 3-month high-touch healing experience for visionary women who are ready to feel as powerful in their bodies as they do in their business. Inside, we decode your nervous system, your minerals, your hormones. We read your labs like the sacred text that it is, so we have actual answers. And then we pair that with deep energetic recalibration, subconscious release. We use gene keys, use human design, and true embodied healing. This isn't about fixing burnout, because that's not what we're doing here. This is about becoming the woman whose body is powerful, whose body is completely electric, whose energy, clarity, radiance finally matches the size of her mission. If you know your success isn't meant to cost you your vitality and you're ready for a science-backed, spirit-led reset, then the Quantum Reset is your invitation. So check the link in the show notes or send me a message on Instagram and let's bring your body back online with your brilliance. Now, let's get back to the show.
and they eat very seasonal, so they're constantly changing their gut bugs from one season to the next. So there's so much information that we can take from their, longevity, which is based on really, a culture and customs that are very intact from thousands of years ago. And that's why, I had, Buettner on my podcast, because we talked about the differences and the similarities between the Ayurvedic approach and the centenarian approach. It was really quite amazing how similar they were. So we can learn so much from them. But one thing that we have to do is, I think teaching your body how to take fiber and training it over time probably would be good. But a lot of people just say, I can't eat it. I just feel bad. Exactly. So that's where I think troubleshooting is saying, well, is it your stomach acid that's lacking? Is it your bile flow that's lacking? Is it pancreatic duodenal enzyme issues? Is it the environment of your gut? Is it the lymph around your gut? What part of that digestion is broken? That's why I wrote the book, Eat Wheat, which not that I want everybody to eat wheat, but it was sort of like, this is a canary in the coal mine. Nobody's looking at the real problem. And let's go through and do a troubleshooting guide and say, here's how you can find out what part is broke and why, and then address it, in a very natural way where it gives you a wider berth of foods that you can begin to tolerate, where people can begin to eat wheat again. Why could you eat wheat when you were 18, but now you can't? Or greasy fried food. Not that we should eat any of those foods, but you surely should be able to.
Right.
Our digestive system can break down glyphosate and heavy metals, but not in like crazy amounts. Of course, it'll overwhelm you. But most people are so broken that they really react to that. And that reaction is something we should look at as a what should we do, and clearly tell you stay away from the toxic part of that, glyphosate, all that processed food, of course. But more importantly is, your digestion is linked to your ability to detoxify. And we have 70 million tons of toxic chemicals dumped in our atmosphere every year, according to the EPA. That's going to filter down on the air we breathe, the water we drink. Everything ends up in your digestion. And if you can't digest wheat, dairy, nuts, seeds, grains, you're all living sort of in a bubble wrapped kind of a diet, boy, that's going to not just end there. We really need to look at the real upstream cause. And that's really what Ayurveda does, is it looks at that upstream as far as, and even to the point we look at stress and go, wow, I wrote an article recently about, and I'm sure you have the same thing when you talk to, clients and they're healthy, they eat really healthy, but they go to their Western doctor and the doctor wants to put them on a statin. It's like we have like a deficiency of statins on this planet. And I have the same thing. I have really healthy patients. They go to the doctor, same kind of thing. And I go because they're like people who care about their health. And then when you look at the real cause of high blood sugar, high blood pressure, extra cholesterol, extra weight around your belly, you find that the elephant in the room is stress. It's this culture of this chronic incoming. And the body responds by breathing a little bit different. Yep. And that becomes normal. Next thing you know, we start breathing more shallow, which activates a fight or flight response. So our whole life, our body is responding to life as a stress, a little chronic bear in the woods chasing you kind of stress. And your body's response to that chronic fight or flight stress is to put more sugar in the blood to basically deal with that stress, to create more cholesterol and put it in the blood so I can make more stress-fighting hormones, to take any reserve fuel and get hungry a lot more to get that reserve fuel so I can put it under the mattress in my fat cells for reserve fuel if this war never ends. So it's this chronic stress that clearly is the underpinnings of all this metabolic syndrome that we have epidemic in our culture. And then when you look at the logical things, well, what gets rid of stress? So there's tons of research on meditation. So I went and I looked at all the science on meditation, and it turns out that there's study after study that meditation will lower your blood sugar, lower your blood pressure, lower your cholesterol levels, help you lose weight. So what we're kind of missing in this boat is the idea that we aren't living in the eye of this crazy storm. We're living in the winds that's dangerous in this crazy storm. And my first book, Body, Mind, Sport, we compared nose breathing and mouth breathing during exercise. And we found that when you breathe through your nose, just doing that alone, the brain waves during vigorous exercise went into a meditative calm. So imagine running as fast as you could, but your brain responding to that experience, exercise, as if you were meditating. Now, let's take that ability to be calm in activity into taking your kids to soccer practice or driving in traffic and create a bigger eye of the calm so you can support more productive wins in your life. So you don't have to go live in a bubble and do nothing and meditate away and hibernate because the world's too stressful. No, we're unlimited in potential. And that's the beauty of the Ayurvedic message, is the bigger the I, the more powerful the winds. And that's what this whole thing is about, living in harmony with nature, breathing in a way that tells your body the war is over, in a way that's not fight or flight, that tells your body, don't digest your food because there's a bear chasing you. You know, this is not a time to be ordering pizza. Well, I got to save my life. So that kind of a thing. And how to reset your nervous system, you know, with yoga, breathing, meditation, or a hike in the woods, or just finding that peace and calm and trying to build the winds around that storm. So you become over time, a fully mature hurricane with that ability to be incredibly dynamically active, but hailing from that internal experience of composure and calm. And I know we've all tasted that, but Ayurveda gives you the map to replicate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love every piece of that. The breathing thing. So I have a brick and mortar Pilates studio. And so we have a specific way we breathe in Pilates, right? And then I've been going to this yoga class. I'm trying to go once a week to this yoga class at the gym. It's at a time I can go to. And, you know, where it's all about the, you know, it's the nose breathing. And so I find that, first of all, it's challenging just because of Pilates, you breathe a different way. But I've really noticed that it really does do something to how, because there's one yoga class that's more like a flow, and then there's another one that's like a warrior yoga, and it's like a high intensity kind of thing. But that is such a challenge to be able to tell yourself, like, no, calm down. You can still breathe through your nose. We don't have to breathe through your mouth. Like that, it really does change how your body, like, I don't know, I can just tell a difference, and just training myself to breathe that way, and like how I'm experiencing, like, you know, the quote unquote stress of what we're doing in the class. Like it really does change.
You're 100% right. When we did our studies, and normally in exercise, your fight or flight nervous system goes to 100%, and your parasympathetic calm vagal response system goes to 0. And that's how we exercise, and most of us live our life. But when you breathe through your nose, even during vigorous exercise, in our study, what happened was the fight or flight only went up 50%. And the parasympathetic didn't zero out. It stayed at 50%. So the two opposite nervous systems were coexisting. That's that coexistence of opposites. You have the dynamic activity and the calm together. That's yoga, union, the combination of dynamic activity and calm together. That's why it's different. The brain waves change to a meditative calm, yet you're vigorously active. It's such a cool experience that we can all replicate just by, you know, really simply learning how to go for a walk. Everybody should just try this simple exercise, like go for a walk, breathe through your nose, count how many steps you take on your inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps for the inhale, and count how many steps you take for the exhale, only breathing through your nose. Now your goal when you're walking is to do at least 10 steps for the inhalation and 15 to 20 steps for your exhalation, and see how that feels. It's going to take a little while for you to get to the longer exhale, but the longer exhale slows the breath down, allows carbon dioxide to build up naturally. And, you know, when people have a panic attack, what do? They put a paper bag over their mouth. They rebreathe their carbon dioxide. They get calm. We have something called overbreathing, because every time we get stressed out, we change how we breathe. Rib cage gets a little tighter. That becomes normal, a little tighter. Over time, we lose access. One study with elite athletes, 91% of them did not have a diaphragm relaxing and contracting fully. The rib cage does its thing, which is to get tighter and tighter, squeezing the air out. Diaphragm gets weaker, and it causes shallow breathing or overbreathing, which means overbreathing oxygen. And one study showed that 75% of the oxygen people are breathing in, normal people, they're breathing out unused. So we're just blowing out all this oxygen. We breathe it in, burn it out, don't even use it. Such a waste, sort of very American. And we also blow off excess CO2. So oxygen goes high, CO2 goes low. And that's the perfect storm for anxiety. And in fact, when oxygen is high and CO2 is low, the bond between the oxygen and the hemoglobin in the blood stays super tight. So the body is reluctant to let the oxygen leave the blood, and your tissues become hypoxic. And that's not a good look for age-related decline, and cognitive decline, cancers are all opportunistic, looking for a hypooxygenated state. So when you actually slow your breathing down, CO2 levels become naturally higher. You become more comfortable with that. That CO2 triggers the release of the oxygen into your blood, and it tells your nervous system that the war is over. And it's simply done by, you know, breathing through your nose and practicing with a little bit of a longer exhale, or just going for a run or a bike ride or a hike in the woods and just breathe through your nose. And you can read all the science on my website about just type in nose breathing and all my articles come up about that. It's pretty cool, amazing research and something every one of us can do.
Yeah, so simple. I mean, it's such a simple practice. Well, and I feel like so much of Ayurveda is, I mean, like you said before, a lot of this, not a lot, well, yeah, some of this I feel like are things that we've heard before. Some of it might be common knowledge, but the way Ayurveda is putting this all together, like it doesn't necessarily mean we're all implementing it, but the way Ayurveda is putting it all together, I feel like even just talking about, like, I love how you say people bubble wrap their digestion. I feel like just understanding that piece gives us so much more like freedom, where it's like, oh, I don't have to cut all these gajillion things out of my diet. Like I can just work on, like you were talking about, the detox, your digestion, like all of these other pieces. And then there's so much more freedom to eat a more varied diet and not have to feel like I have to cut all these things out. So I just feel like Ayurveda is putting together, so like you said, it's like the study, the practice of life. I think that's such a great translation of what it is, because that's what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And for folks, the easiest place to start is just to find out what your body type is. You have more of those cold winter properties, or you have more summer, hot, fiery, we call it pitta properties, or you're more like a spring body type where you hold on to more water and tend to be more congested. And you can take our body type questionnaire at lifestyle.com. It's free. And you find out what it is. And you go, oh my God, I'm a super hot, fiery body type. Well, then logically, right? What season would you be most vulnerable in? Well, you're a hot body type in a hot season. And if you're eating abundance of spicy food, then you might overheat and inflame, get heartburn, indigestion. You're going to be more vulnerable to that. Mm-hmm. If you're a cold winter body type, you're eating cold smoothies, and you're cold all the time, maybe you should eat warm foods and have your higher protein, higher fat foods, like the squirrels eat nuts and seeds during the winter. This is logical, right? It's a higher protein, higher fat time of the year, right? We know that the gut bugs in the hunter-gatherer tribes in the spring had bugs called actinobacteria, which are really good at delivering fat and protein as fuel. And then hunter-gatherer bugs in the summer had bugs that are bacteroidetes that deliver sugar as fuel, for that reserve fuel. So we know that this is how we are designed to be. And it's just a matter of saying, hey, you know what? I can actually align myself according to the seasons, understand my unique body type weaknesses and strengths, and what foods I should kind of take a little bit of a break on in a particular season, or dial down the wine, cheese, and beer and alcohol and coffee in the summer if I'm a hot type, warm up those soups and stews in the winter. It's logical, right? But when you look at your type and say, I'm a cold type, then here's a list of warm things to do. Like, wow. And nature provided that in season as the antidote naturally for the extreme of that season. It's like, we're circadian beings. And nature provided a way to stay in rhythm, and we don't listen. And that's the beautiful thing. It's a beautiful map.
That's it. And I feel like the more, like, once you look at it, like everything you're talking about, you find out your type and you can get the seasonal diet. I feel like everything would be just kind of from there just becomes intuitive, because intuitively it makes sense. And you, like, once you start listening and understanding your body, like, well, yeah, it makes sense that if I'm this type of, like, it just becomes an intuitive thing of, now I understand how my body works. And now I understand, like, why these things make me feel better. And these things, like, it just, yeah. Well, and I think you're just talking about nature. The other thing I wanted to say is, I feel like we've had this conversation on the show before, but I feel like that's been to the ultimate detriment of our health as a collective, is this our like separation from nature. Because like you're saying, like, nature has provided all of these things. Like, there's a reason there's seasons, and there's a reason certain things grow in certain seasons, and like we have circadian rhythm, like all of these things we were designed to flow by nature, like nature. And I think that's such a big reason of why so many of us struggle with health and chronic disease now, that we've just become so disconnected from that.
No, you're so right. And the beauty of Ayurveda is it takes it even deeper. The other definition of Ayurveda is Ayurveda. Ayur is life and Veda is truth. So it's also about letting the truth of who you really are. And if you're plowing up against the current upstream every day, exhausted at the end of the day, need coffee to get through the day, a glass of wine to end the day, there's no way. There's so much noise and stress and fight or flight in your system. You can't still the lake and become calm. And then when the lake is calm, you can see the bottom. You can look with more self-awareness and recognize problems as problems in a healing response. Recognize with a level of self-awareness patterns of behavior that you created as a child that you're still projecting on the screen today as an adult. And Ayurveda is all about becoming more self-aware to actually let something more delicate and more vulnerable and more powerful out. So you can really let who you truly are out, as opposed to living your life and your happiness and your satisfaction comes from people liking you, approving you, appreciating you. All of our happiness has been conditioned to get that contentment from the outside. That's our world. And Ayurveda is like, wait, all these rules about living in life and harmony with nature and going downstream are to create a calm lake. So you can see clearly and be more interested in your inner space and allow yourself to kind of scrub patterns of behavior that are holding you hostage where your happiness is depending on what's happening. And that's what I fell in love with Ayurveda, was it takes you all the way to saying, you know what, I can achieve a level of contentment and happiness and joy and a level of full potential by actually letting this happen from inside out versus only be happy when good things are happening and really sad when bad things. My whole life was depending on what's happening outside of me. That is a dangerous road to hoe as well. So it's such a beautiful science because it ties all of it together. It's not religious, doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter any of that. It just gives you, say, hey, you know what? Here are some tools that'll give you a little more awareness of that peace and calm, that ability to love fully, that's inside of all of us.
Yeah, I love that so much. I don't know if you know who Dave Meltzer is. When you were saying that, it brought to mind, he always says, be more interested than interesting. So I feel like that just came up when you were saying that. I think this is such a great conversation and is so just relevant to things we've been talking about on the show. And you've provided so many actionable things that the women can walk away with here and start to implement. I do have one more question that I want to ask you, but can you let everybody know, you've mentioned it, but can you let everybody know where all the places are to learn about everything that you're doing and how they can really dive into all of this even deeper?
Sure. I have a website. It's called lifespa.com, lifespa.com. And that's where we write. We have over 1,500 articles. They're all for free and videos tying your health concern, ancient wisdom practice with the modern science. It's all science-based and with the ancient wisdom. So you can type up your health concern, find out what your problem is and read about it. And there's, quizzes, your body type quiz are all there. You can get all the information. Our business model is all the knowledge is for free. And then, of course, we do have an Ayurvedic store there as well. We have Ayurvedic herbs that I've formulated over the many years where you can buy some of the Ayurvedic products to help bring your body back into balance. Not so you have to take them for the rest of your life. The whole point is help the body heal itself, get on, get better, get off, no dependency. So absolute goal. And of course, we have a newsletter where we put this knowledge out 3 times a week, and I'm on all the social channels as well. We have a podcast. You can tune into that as well. And just check us out at lifespa.com.
I love that. And I love that. That's our motto too when I'm working with clients. Like, it's not for life. Like, you heal the thing, you balance the thing, and then move on. I love that. Okay. The last thing I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody is, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Pull back the bow. In other words, if I pull back a bow and my nervous system isn't calm and my lake isn't still and I have no self-awareness and I'm shaking this bowstring and I let it go and I take action from that place, you're never going to find that bowstring. That arrow is gone, right? But if I pull back the bow and I hold it perfectly still and I take action from that calm place, it's transformational. And this is an old Vedic concept, to function from that place of peace and calm. And that means like taking it off the mat. Doesn't mean just meditate, because meditation is great. But if you don't have ways to take it off the mat and live that calm, then you're just going to be addicted to meditating, because I have to meditate to feel calm. That's not the point. The point is to be calm in the world and dynamic in the world, but from a calm place. And that can start with the things we talked about. Simple things, go downstream, start living in harmony with nature, do some meditation, go for forest bathing and walks in the forest, and try to recognize the difference between all this incoming and that calm that is waiting for us, all of us, on the inside, and start to put a little bit more energy into experiencing that and expanding that in your own awareness right before you go to sleep, when you wake up. So many simple things that you can do.
That's such a great answer. Thank you so much, Dr. John, for this and for all the wisdom you're putting out there and the information that you've given us all. This is such a powerful episode. So thank you.
No, thank you, Hope. Appreciate it.